Hey, what's up, guys? Night Owl Nighter here. I'd like to share today a live 960 tournament that I just participated in chess.com. As I said before, I'm a big fan of chess 960. This was an interesting, yeah, I won, but I really had some very interesting games. That's why I wanted to make a video where we're going to see those games and analyze the positions together. This was pretty much 5 rounds, 10-0 game setting, and with no further ado, let's go right into it. I played black 3 times and white twice. So this was the first game. This was an interesting one because my opponent decided to open the king pawn on f, and I decided to give him the center and take control over the long light diagonal. Here I was a little bit hesitant because if I push the c pawn, it's very likely that I'll need to, or my idea was to where to develop the dark square bishop, and c7 was a good one, but the rook would be blocked. I ended up going for this anyway, and then he just hung a pawn, attacked my bishop, simply moved back and took the pawn or trade. And now here he kind of protected the pawn for any special things or extra attacks, and here my queen was kind of stuck, and so I developed this idea of h6 and then the queen here also attacking the e4 pawn, but I wasn't very sure this was a good idea. We can check the computer analysis later. Here he removed one defendant of this pawn, even though he is attacking my a7 pawn, and I actually blundered. Lucky me, he didn't see it, because if I take here, he can take my a pawn with tempo. Well, I actually, if I switch to analysis from here, if he takes here, I actually have a tempo move with knight d2. So let's say he goes king here, forcing me to take with the knight. He can take with the knight, otherwise I take his knight with tempo, and then I need to move my rook. And this position, even though the engine favors black, probably because the king is in the center, yeah, black is better, but I still have a lot to develop and activate my rook, castle the king. Yeah, it's okay. Now, moving on, he traded the dark square bishop and then traded here, and his rook was a gunner. I decided not to take. Do I remember why? I don't remember. I thought I had a tempo protecting the bishop here, and then castling, and then only then taking. But when he moved queen e3, I didn't want to take here. Well, one, because it's mate. Then queen takes e7, forced king g8, and then queen e8 is mate. Then I kind of gave away the winning the exchange. Now I was feeling much better because my king was safe. He hung a pawn, Here I gotta be careful. I could not take with the rook because I would also give the pawn back. So I'm up 3 pawns, and he just, yeah, I don't know what he had in mind. Maybe if I take right away, he can do some tempo moves. I don't know, but I had a tempo move myself where I could check his king, yeah, and I would be more than happy to trade queens here, and protect any potential checks and tempo moves after recapturing or capturing and capitalizing on his bishop. He hung the queen and then resigned, and that's it. So this was the first game. He was up in time. I don't know why he didn't give it some more thought before moving queen c3. This was the first game. Let me jump right into the analysis. So right at around here, I was wondering if black is better, and the computer says white is still better. And after this move where he's pushing, yeah, this was the main move that he stopped giving white an advantage, even though I was concerned about the a7 pawn. But as we said, as we looked at, the knight d2 would be a tempo move attacking the bishop, or forking, quote unquote, on the knight and the bishop. And when he opened this diagonal here, with his king still here, he would have to castle to the, I never know in 960, is this the queen side? Oh, this wasn't the right move for me. It was supposed to be f5. f5. Huh. I would never see this move. It's opening too much. f5. He goes queen e3. Knight takes his knight. Knight takes, trades. And then I move my queen, forking an exposed here. Forking an exposed. So let me see if I can reproduce right. Here, 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 here. Exposed king, unprotected piece equals fork. In this case, well, not really. He could do this. Take e4. Yeah. Anyways, very interesting game, the first game. I was already winning material, but he blundered the queen. Next game. This was my first game playing white. I decided to, I took a while thinking on how to develop the opening on this position. I usually have a rook on the long diagonal, usually. So I either think about the center or opening the long diagonal for the bishops. But in this case, with bishops on b1 and c1, I didn't have much idea. So I developed here first to then push the other pawn, blocking him, push the pawn behind the rook. Here I was not certain. I always think about giving up a bishop for doubling pawns, which in this case I had the opportunity and decided not to take it. It was too early in the game. It would open, if he took with the f pawn, it would open this rook for him. I didn't like it. So this one, the b6 move, I think it was a little bit slow. Here I'm just doing a silly thread of taking the h7 pawn, which he simply protected here, and I just lost the tempo where I had to come back with my knight. Not a good decision by me. Let me remember how this developed. Now here the G2 pawn is being attacked, but I already saw that. I simply castled. And my knight is protecting the other E2 pawn. He also castled. I started creating a battery on this diagonal. Traded, moved, and here I intentionally wanted to open the F file for me, and you guys are going to see how this played out. It was a very sharp position, but I was losing, but since it was sharp, it was really hard for him to capitalize on it. So here I sack the exchange. This is very tricky. If my battery was inverted, that would be mate. But here I really wanted to open his king. My king was already open. I had this back E pawn, which was kind of weak. So I just went for some crazy things. And here my plan was to maneuver my queen back to D1 and potentially G and check, maybe a rook lift. So he blocked, he cut the connection between my queen and bishop, and I did the same. I moved the same idea I was describing. I moved to D1, check, and then here I wanted to see some discovery on his queen, but not really, kind of silly. He was playing defensive here, which was good because he had an advantage, +2, as you can see. And now he did a rook lift, which ended up, pretty much creating a safe position for his king. Even though I made this sack to open his king, I don't think it paid out, and I started to regret my decision here. Now I cannot trade queens, so I pulled back, pushed my pawn, and then started pushing pawns. Now here he wanted to launch an attack on this side of the board. He has a great pawn structure, but here's what happened. When I started to push my pawns, and my pieces are all here, just same as theirs or his, and now he moved to an unprotected D6 square, giving me the option to here was a crucial move in this game. I had to pause the video for a little bit. Now what I was saying here, he originally did this push of the H pawn, and my first idea was fancy trade, giving me back material, because I can simply take his rook, he takes my rook, I take the pawn, so I win material here. But the follow-up that I was already thinking was, how will he protect the other pawns? His queen was kind of hidden. He has no tempo attacking my king, so that's why I decided to go for the trade. And here he realized, because it took him a minute to make this move, on how to take advantage of his pawn structure. But my queen here is simply too much aggressive attacking these pawns, so he kind of gave up the pawns. Okay, now here is another interesting situation. I could open up one of the files by either taking with the my C or E pawns, but I was concerned that I didn't want to open up too much my position where his queen would be able to do some attacks. So I took the C pawn, allowing him to push his D pawn to D3 as he did, and creating this passed protected pawn. But I wasn't very worried because my bishop was already on G4, and I could come back to D1 blocking the pawn. and then his rook is, in my experience, I don't know if there is theory about it, the rook coming down to, when he has a d2 pawn, the rook coming down to e1 or even c1 is extremely aggressive, extremely dangerous. So I just went for the pawns and said, I don't care, you can protect this, I'll just take the other one, I can always pull back my bishop, and I took all of his pawns. And all of a sudden, where I sacked the exchange and created some complex position here, he wasn't able to hold, even though he had the advantage. And when he pushed the pawn, I protected. He offered the trade, and now here I thought, can his rook against my bishop and a bunch of pawns be dangerous? Now, after giving some thought, I realized that, how long did I take? 20 seconds. I realized that I could push my b pawn, protecting it, and then I can push to a4 and c4, creating a pyramid where I'm protecting the base pawn. And I can move my king, attacking his rook, and he's attacking his pawn, and his rook is completely stuck trying to protect that pawn to have any chance. So here's what happened. I start moving, and then I anchor my pawn on b3. And then, like I said, move to a4, attack his pawn, start pushing my pawns. I don't mind trading here. The other thing is I can push to g4, move my king away, and push the other pawn and create this very interesting situation where my pawns are all in the right squares and my bishop is in the perfect square here in d1. It's amazing to think about a bishop on a center square and on the first roll is such a powerful piece. So that's what I did. And then when he moved his king back, I mean, he was just losing tempo here. He didn't know how to protect. So I pushed this pawn so that my king can give way for my rook, for my bishop to keep protecting the g pawn, and then I have everything protected. And that's how the game developed. Here I could have taken the pawn, but I didn't. I thought, pushing my pawns was still a good plan, so I just kept doing it. And now I took his pawn, and he just goes back and forth, as you can see. And then here I didn't know if I had another way to capitalize. I thought moving my bishop was right. Maybe here, there, h5, but I didn't have to, so I simply, and here is a simple mate, which I kind of took long, but that's fine. So sacked my rook on the f6 knight, and then created a complex position. That's how I won, even though the computer says that black is better after a sack. The third game I was playing black again. I'm gonna try to move faster here. I just went for the center. He went for the long diagonal, I just went for the center. No questions asked. Here I wanted to double my rooks in this file. His king is somewhat, too surrounded by the pieces, and the pawns are not creating openings for him, but I didn't know how to capitalize. I didn't know how to open up things to attack him, so I just had to keep developing. And here I start winning material, right? Because after, let me see here, if he takes, let's say like this, I can go rook d2, and he doesn't have anything. If he takes with the knight, should I take? And do I get the second rank? Is it really that powerful? Here the system is saying queen d7. Huh. I don't know why. I don't want to trade everything here. Oh no, I have a check. And mate. Let's see. That's the thing, right? This is mate, isn't it? Yep, this is mate. Okay, this was a very long interruption. As you can see, it's even already dark outside. But I'll continue the video anyways. So where were we? Was on creating this battery on the D file to do a mate in 1 in this case. But if we move back to the main line, what happened was after I captured here, he pretty much was putting a rook and a queen and his king in these h7 b1 diagonal, and I have a light square bishop, so that's very dangerous for him. What ended up happening is I kicked his knight. I then attacked this diagonal that I mentioned, and then I was in question if I should capitalize right away on the exchange. He ended up protecting with the knight e1 here, and that's when I thought about, okay, this is very strong, the queen and the king here. I want to do the exchange. His other rook is pinned anyways, and then I'm gonna push my pawn, and with this pawn I create all sorts of complications for him. He tries to put the queen here on e2, which is interesting because I cannot take anymore because my queen is unprotected. But then I just kept pushing, and here he really had a lot of trouble. Here I don't think there was any way out because I'm threatening bishop takes d3 and then winning the queen and the knight for a rook and a bishop. So the computer is telling him to do the castle long, which is very interesting. But I ended up simply capturing the pawn here and then moving my queen. This move, king a2, to me was very bad because now I protect my queen with tempo. As you can see, even the engine says it moves from -7, -8 to a -13, wasn't it? Yeah, -13, because I can check. Well, it says -16 and the best move. Yeah, it's check first. Check. Now my queen is protected, so I can capitalize. And then here I took the pawn, so I'm already up a lot of material, and he blundered. He simply blundered. Because now I can push my rook d2 and win more material. And then he resigned. So this was the, let me see, third game, right? The fourth game, hold on. Yeah, this is the third game. The fourth game, unfortunately, this guy was one of the strongest in the tournament, but he didn't move, so I guess he had to step away. Things happen. And then the fifth game and last one, and I'll try to be quick, was also very interesting because here what happened was also another setup that I'm not very used. I usually see a bishop on the long diagonal right off from the starting position, and I decided to do an odd way because I didn't know how to develop my pieces. I simply didn't know. So let me go straight to the computer so we can analyze together. So let me see after 3 moves. Here the computer is already giving the advantage to black. That's how bad I was in the opening, in developing my pieces, putting them on the right squares. Here I just wasted 2 moves. I was concerned about opening with g3 and then putting my bishop on g2. It's just bad opening. Bad opening. Now when he pushes this pawn, I started feeling good because I can somehow free up my dark square bishop and then win this pawn, and his king is somewhat exposed, and that's what we're going to see at the end of the game. He pushed too far out, in my opinion. Even though the machine still gives black the advantage, I think he was too aggressive. I don't mind doubling my pawns here. And then here, I think he should have taken and traded this. Because here's what we're going to see happen, right? Here, I lost a tempo on a great move, which was bishop g3. The reason for that is after bishop g3, I threat rook f8 mate. So this was really interesting. And the system says he needs to go queen, and then I take and win material. Yeah. But he tried to keep protecting this pawn. I opened the diagonal and he didn't see the mate. He was that happens when you're greedy in material, and usually I am, especially with pawns. Is he takes a pawn. He was thinking that I would potentially trade queens and even give the if he takes the b2 pawn, then I lose the file by retreating my rook. Not good at all. But rook f8 mate. And this was the last game of the championship. Very interesting 960 games. I was pleased with the way I played. Still have a lot to learn. But these 10-0 games are starting to get my attention. It's a very interesting system. I'm so used to 3 or 3-2 or 5-0, but 10-0 for standard chess and 960 are better ways to learn, and especially tactics, is positional chess, strategy. And that's it for this analysis. I just wanted to share this tournament, live tournament that I just did. And with that, thanks for watching. This was Night Owl Nighter. Lights out. Peace.